following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This episode, we're talking about getting attention, that thing everyone needs some of, but a lot of us are also ashamed about. I'm going to warn you off the top that this show may seem to contradict itself at times because this is a complex topic with a lot of nuance and subjectivity. Many people do unhealthy things to seek attention. A need for too much attention can indicate some problems within a person. But let's be real here. Aren't you sick of that old diss? She just wants attention. Everyone wants some level of attention. Some people can't separate positive attention from negative attention, and other people have a complicated relationship with attention because people noticing us usually means they're going to be mean to us, but humans are social creatures. We all want attention to a greater or lesser degree. But people just casually toss that off. She just wants attention. He's just doing it for attention. So what? Wanting attention is treated as baseline selfish, narcissistic, or arrogant. But take it from an extreme introvert like me, you need people's attention to get things done, even if you don't necessarily want it. Having an unhealthy relationship with attention, needing too much of it, or going out of your way to avoid it, can be a sign that something's seriously wrong. But since that's the case, and low self-esteem, loneliness, and various mental health issues are awful things to deal with, should we really be mocking someone for showing signs that they're experiencing these things? This is one of those situations where being more specific in the objection would do a lot of good. If attention-seeking behavior is manipulative, passive-aggressive, flat-out obnoxious, or even risks a person's health or safety, yes, those are moments to cry foul. We all know someone who makes a complete jerk out of themselves in a desperate ploy for attention. These are people who struggle with validation and they end up in a spiral towards their worst nightmare, no one wanting them around. But part of the reason people like this are so embarrassing is that they're trying so hard to hide the fact that they're desperate for someone to think they're good. Because they're that desperate for someone to think they're good, they actively drive people away. They'd seriously be better off chilling out more and letting people like them for them instead of bragging and alienating people who were otherwise inclined to give them a chance. But I know, easier said than done sometimes. It can be extremely difficult to tell whether someone is just an exhibitionist or whether they have a need for attention that would be considered pathological. Many of us have periods where we post a lot on social media, but if you're doing that for the likes and comments instead of just a desire to share what you're doing, that's the potential problem. Is a person socially awkward, or do they make comments that seem designed to cross social boundaries and make people uncomfortable? The latter is an unhealthy attention-seeking behavior. Are they merely proud of their successes, or are they bragging about their wealth and or appearance, and are they exaggerating these things? The latter is obviously not good. Is there tendency to catastrophize just because they're extremely anxious? Or do they revel in the attention the freakouts bring, positive or negative? Now, catastrophization isn't great, but if it's authentic anxiety, that's one thing. Go see Inside Out 2. But reveling in attention while pretending to have anxiety? People do that. Do they lie, exaggerate, feign illness, or create conflicts to pull the focus of things back to them? Do they seem to want sexualized attention to prove they're desirable as opposed to just really liking sex? Do they act out when they see someone else getting attention, again, to pull that focus back on them? Do they fish for compliments, run themselves down so people will correct them, or beat themselves up out loud in a way that seems unduly theatrical? Do they seem to lack empathy? Do they have an intense fear of abandonment? And no one likes criticism, but are they so sensitive to criticism that you have to avoid anything that remotely sounds like they did something wrong? Do they display antisocial behavior, like serious problems with anyone with perceived power over them? Is the attention-seeking behavior interfering with their day-to-day life or relationships? Have you ever asked them not to post something or to stop talking about something only to be met with a backlash that doesn't consider your feelings or privacy? These things can be red flags that something is really wrong. And if someone's pulling you into their drama, obviously that can have a negative impact. There are personality disorders related to attention seeking. We're going to only get into those a little because I don't want anyone self-diagnosing or diagnosing someone else because of the show. Don't diagnose based on a radio program or podcast, okay? But after the break, I do want to talk about an overused but very real concept that ties into attention. Narcissism. Yeah, I want to get that out of the way because it's buzzy and trendy, and yeah, I kind of hate it, but it is on point. Questions, comments, just want to say hi. Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. Join the mailing list while you're fill out the contact form at Not Therapy Show on X, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We'll be back after the break talking attention seeking, when it's good, when it's bad, and when to seek help when it's not therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and it's not therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, and we're still talking about attention. When wanting it is good, when needing it is bad. And I'd be remiss if we didn't cover, I mentioned it before the break, the dreaded narcissism. Not narcissistic personality disorder. Plain old self-obsession and a need for admiration, named after Narcissus, the character in Greek myth who was cursed to fall in love with his own reflection. To be clear, liking yourself isn't narcissism. It's actually the opposite of narcissism. Having healthy boundaries isn't narcissism. Again, it's the opposite of narcissism. Thinking you're good at something, not the best, not the greatest ever, just good at something, isn't narcissism. Even thinking you're the best at something when you are objectively the best at something isn't narcissism. Narcissism is defined as a grandiose sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy for others, a need for excessive admiration, and the belief that one is unique and deserving of special treatment. Narcissists are unusually sensitive to criticism, act out if they're not the center of attention, and struggle to relate to other people. And yes, the grandiosity aspect is inverted in covert narcissism, but again, let's get to the attention-seeking part of this. Some researchers believe that there's an unhealthy level of narcissism, though there's not much agreement on where that healthy level is. There's also no agreement regarding what causes narcissism. There's a general understanding that it's connected to an inability to truly internally self-validate. The big issue with narcissists is that, nothing is ever really their fault. They're so much better than other people, and so they rarely seek treatment. And when they do, it's for something that's a side effect, a self-medication like addiction. It's difficult to treat a narcissist because any correction is seen as criticism, and criticism is often seen as an attack. The commonly used measuring tool for narcissism is the Narcissistic Personality Index, which you can take online, and it assigns everyone a score out of 40. The average adult, give or take, scores around a 15. Little higher than a 15. U.S. celebrities, shouldn't surprise you, higher, closer to an 18, right? I took the test for the sake of disclosure. I got a 5, which is apparently right on the border of WTF low. I guess I have to work on hyping myself up a bit more. Now, okay, an average doesn't mean healthy or ideal. And the current world does reward narcissism in the short term. So it may not surprise you that narcissism scores have been rising among U.S. undergrads, so young adults, from an average of 15.5 in the mid-80s, which is still about where the general population is, to 17.5 now. Yes, U.S. undergrads are, well, not current year, but the last data that's available. According to last data, U.S. undergrads are almost on par with celebrities. But this still isn't in the range that someone would be considered statistically high in narcissism. That's a score of 21 or higher. So on a 40-point scale, 17.5, 18, 21, that's a fairly substantial difference. Blech. Very few people score a 21 or higher. And yet, the word narcissist gets thrown around a lot. Why is that? Well, it's an easy way to control someone who actually isn't a narcissist, right? Because a true narcissist will likely dismiss being called a narcissist or get so angry that no one would dare call them that. In fact, I've seen quite a few narcissists use claims of narcissism against other people to kind of muddy the waters. Well, you're a narcissist and you're a narcissist, so everybody's a narcissist, so, nothing changes. But narcissism itself is complex. There are different facets of narcissism that are tested by the Narcissistic Personality Index. They are authority, self-sufficiency, superiority, exhibitionism, exploitativeness, vanity, and entitlement. Now, just based on that breakdown, you can see how some facets of narcissism are more socially accepted than others. Authority and self-sufficiency, for instance, are often seen as good things, even though not learning how to share or accept help, not necessarily great. Exploitativeness and entitlement, not so much. We see those as bad things, right? Again, someone can be highly narcissistic without being pathologically narcissistic. Many of us in the media have to fake elements of narcissism. So, we can appear confident and charming. There's a real fine line, and it's subjective, where one ends and the other begins. There's a lot of when you really want to strangle someone. Yeah, okay. But those of us in the media who aren't disordered, at least not that way, understand that attention is a tool, not proof we're better than anyone else. And many of us just trust compliments because we usually only get them when someone wants something. More on that in a bit. The people I know in the media that I consider friends also have legitimate empathy for others, even though criticism and pushback is a part of our job. And I did stand-up comedy. You sometimes have to find the line of making fun of instead of having fun with. We don't enjoy upsetting people, and we care when we accidentally do. When people get offended, though, that's a different story. Any comedian will separate hurt and offense. Offense is one of those things narcissists or attention seekers, negative attention seekers, tend to use to call attention to themselves. Oh, they're so offended. That's what, so what? You're offended. Why did what I say is bad? Oh, you're offended. Okay, I'm supposed to do something about you being offended, right? It's a way of, oh, I'm so offended. It's a way of just calling attention to themselves without having to make their point. The lack of diagnosis in someone who is perpetually offended or anything else doesn't mean you have to be around someone. If you find someone's narcissism off-putting, you have the right to avoid them as much as possible. That's not being mean. That's setting boundaries. If you're watching the Amazon Prime show The Boys that just came back, I love that show. Homelander, the character on that show, he's a textbook narcissist. He enjoys belittling people, needs constant praise and attention, is a bully, and has an extremely fragile sense of self and very unstable self-esteem. He doesn't care if his heroics are faked and people have to cover things up for him because he sees other people as less important than him and only understands transactional relationship where things of value are being actively extracted, whether those are goods, labor, flattery, sex, money, a sense of legacy. The Boys exaggerates how Homelander uses, abuses, and ultimately discards the people around him. But the way the character is constructed, the basic dynamics are a lot more accurate to a narcissistic pattern than you usually you see on TV. The narcissistic tendencies are not glamorized. It's pretty clear the destruction that happens because nothing is ever his fault. And yet, he doesn't doubt that he deserves to be in charge. I read a baffling review this week of the first 3 hours of season 4 that criticized the show for the fact that Homelander could kill everyone but doesn't. The reason it was baffling is that reviewer completely misses the motivations of the character. Yes, Homelander doesn't like the throngs of people cheering him on. He looks down on them. He thinks they're morons. But he needs that applause. He needs that adulation. And if he kills all the people antagonizing him that leads to the conflicts, that leads to the adulation, well, he'd have to find a brand new way of getting all that applause. And for God's sake, he kills plenty of people, right? But the thing that's important to note is that it's the suffering of others that creates the excitement in him, not the death per se. Then they're just a broken toy. That's what makes him a psychopath as well as a narcissist. Now, what makes Anthony Starr's performance in that role so compelling is what he brings to Homelander. He puts himself in the shoes of somebody he's clearly not, right? He's not a narcissistic sociopath. And in this performance, he will cycle through 4 or 5 rapid flashes of emotion on his face in a matter of seconds. And it's authentic enough that you can recognize those feelings. That's acting. It's brilliant acting. That's not what narcissistic sociopaths are like in real life. When you're in the presence of a true narcissistic sociopath, there's a superficiality in their emotional displays. When you're dealing with someone who is truly narcissistic instead of just thinking a lot of themselves, there's something not quite right there. There's both the sense that something is missing, and then there's too much of other things. There's a puffery that doesn't feel authentic. Sometimes it's that at first glance, they seem sad, but there's something underneath the surface sadness that seems kind of gleeful. They'll seem bored when attention isn't focused on them. And they'll do, selfish, inconsiderate, shocking things to turn the focus and stimulation back to them, even if it hurts other people. Like I said, like with Homelander, they may even enjoy hurting other people. Hurting other people fuels that sense of superiority. Now, this thing about empathy, I want to be really careful because this swings back and hits autistic people. And it's a different type of empathy that we talk about here. Autistic people have trouble with cognitive empathy. That means understanding how somebody is feeling based on nonverbal cues like facial expressions and body language. Autistic people tend to be very high in the other main type of empathy, affective empathy, meaning once they do detect a feeling, they mirror it. They feel bad when someone else feels bad. They feel happy that the people around them are happy, that kind of thing. Autistic people tend to be very high in that second kind of empathy. The narcissistic sociopath is the opposite. Narcissistic sociopaths know they're hurting people around them. They're very good at manipulating the people around them because they have that cognitive empathy, understanding what people are feeling. They just don't care unless it means they can get something they want. Now, keep in mind, we're in the realm of personality disorders here, and narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder are different disorders. They're often lumped together in the media, but they are different things. Now, they're lumped together in the media because there's a lot of overlap. But while both narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, and antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, not ASD, that's autism spectrum disorder, ASPD, both of these involve an unhealthy feeling of superiority. That's narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. But people with antisocial personality disorder don't respect rules, norms, or laws, whereas narcissists are often extremely good at using rules and social norms for their own benefit and against others. That's why so many of them end up in politics. I've spent all this time detailing what narcissism is because narcissism is used way too often as a shutdown tactic for healthy attention-seeking behaviors. You probably aren't a narcissist even though you've been called one. And that's why I wanted to make it clear what narcissism is. And even if you behave narcissistically sometimes, or you're higher in one of the facets of narcissism, you know, if you use a lot of authority at work because it's your company, that doesn't make you a narcissist, right? You probably aren't a narcissist. You probably aren't a narcissist. If you think you are a narcissist, get tested, though most narcissists don't think that their behavior and their thought patterns are problems. So if you're even doubting it, right? So that's what we aren't. How do we know if the attention we're seeking is positive? I'll get into that after the break. Questions, comments, concerns, just want some attention. Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Not Therapy Show is the website, nottherapyshow.com. Join the mailing list while you're there. Fill out the mailing list. Fill out the contact form while you're there, or at Not Therapy Show on socials. Be right back after this break. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in Insta Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking about getting attention when it's healthy, when it's not healthy. And before the break, I talked about narcissism, an unhealthy need for attention and admiration that can become pathological. Now I want to pivot to healthy attention. By that, I mean the reality that all people need some form of validation, acknowledgement, and encouragement. Wanting the good things we do to be recognized by someone else is human. Expecting our feelings to matter is healthy. Wanting support when you're struggling is fair. As humans, we're designed to need a certain amount of interaction with other humans. Extroverts need more of that than introverts, but even the most private person likes their contributions to be noted. There's this somewhat new concept in personal coaching of acknowledgement that I think might help here. Seeing the effort someone put in, even if it's not, a big achievement. For instance, I get that this is hard for you and I appreciate the effort you're putting in as a statement instead of, I see that you're frustrated by the lack of results, right? One is focusing on lack. I see that you're frustrated. The other is, I appreciate the effort you're putting in, even though we don't have that success yet, right? I get that this is hard for you. I see that you're trying. It makes sense that this would be useful for a lot of people since they're being given credit for their efforts instead of only being noticed when they actively succeed or the focus being just on their feelings. Wanting attention or even needing attention at certain critical times, like when you're really struggling, that's perfectly healthy. It's when you start trying to manipulate or control people into giving you attention that it becomes a problem. Now, full disclosure, we all do that manipulative attention seeking to some extent. Top 10 phrase, perfect is a lie. Stop trying to be perfect, okay? The goal is to limit our less than great attention seeking behaviors and be compassionate with ourselves when we do them. Another top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. If you make a habit of manipulating or coercing people into paying attention to you, the attention you receive is going to feel less and less good because part of you knows that it wasn't freely given. These people are giving you attention mainly because they want to avoid the consequences of not giving you attention. That's what makes unhealthy attention seeking unhealthy. Over time, it makes you feel worse, not better. Life is a constant struggle to find the sweet spot between minimizing and downplaying our struggles, which is bad, and exaggerating them to get unhealthy attention, which is obviously also bad. So I'm going to try to show the difference, even though this is highly generalized and subjective. And I red flag comments like, you're being too sensitive and she just wants attention. But this is some examples of healthy versus unhealthy stuff. Just examples. Here we go. Healthy, liking compliments. Accepting compliments is a learned skill. I'm bad at it. Having PTSD makes accepting compliments difficult for me. Part of me really likes them, but a huge part of me doesn't trust them because I associate compliments with emotional blackmail and abuse. My history with compliments is that people who give them to me expect or even demand something in return, hence it being blackmail, right? It's especially scary regarding compliments on my appearance. We live in a world where if you're ugly while womaning, you're treated poorly. But if you're attractive while womaning, you get a totally different but equally bad type of disrespect and a lack of safety. I want to get to a place where I can accept a compliment, especially from men, without worrying that I'm now at risk because that man feels entitled to my body and certain actions. I know I'm currently not in a healthy place and I'm being compassionate with myself, but I know I'm having a healthier day when someone can compliment me and it doesn't trigger a fear response. Now, liking compliments, healthy. Needing to be complimented, especially the point where you fish for compliments and run yourself down hoping someone will disagree with you, that's not healthy. Fishing for compliments isn't sincere humility. Admitting you're bad at something, that's one thing. Going, oh, I'm so bad at this. So someone will say, no, you're not, you're great. That's inauthentic. It's a manipulation rooted in the fact that a lot of environments tear people down when they dare to say that they're, good at something, right? So it's one of these things where it was a survival tactic that is often missed for the manipulation that it is. Fishing for compliments, fake humility. This sort of behavior gradually drives people away because they get tired of the expectation that they praise you. not least because you're probably not reciprocating that praise, that flattery, that compliment. Because let's face it, if you have a habit of fishing for compliments, you're pretty self-absorbed. It takes a lot of energy to go, I'm so this, I'm so that, right? It takes planning and effort, and you're not being present with the people around you. You're using them as props. Okay, next one. Healthy. Telling funny stories to entertain your friends, even if they involve a few harmless embellishments for entertainment value. Many great comedians do this. Unhealthy. Outright lying and embellishing to get attention, especially to shock or horrify people. Various personality disorders has this habit as a symptom for a reason. Many hack comedians do this. You want to spot a good comic? Comic, they know how to embellish honestly. A hack comedian goes for shock laughs. Healthy. Admitting to trusted people that you're feeling helpless, overwhelmed, or at a loss. Think of the scene in the Barbie movie where Barbie's crying because people cruelly rejected her. Unhealthy. Feigning helplessness to manipulate people into giving us attention they otherwise wouldn't. Think of the scene in Barbie where the Barbies play dumb to trick the Kens into doing what they want. This scene's played for laughs, but it's one of the scenes I really struggle with in the movie because that's not #feminism. That's cynical manipulation. Healthy. Admitting to friends that you're feeling down and could use some encouragement. Admitting when you're having a bad day regarding your mental and physical health. And being clear about what would help you manage better. Unhealthy. Performative extremes of emotion where less would actually get you more. Being theatrical about small injuries, slights, or losses. I suspect we can all think of someone like this in our lives. You know, sometimes objects have sentimental value, but my favorite Legend of Zelda bag is wearing out right now, and I'm bummed out about that, but I'm not having a meltdown. Healthy emotional expressions are authentic, not ploys for forced sympathy. But Disney, if you can hear me, if you make a Pouchy fanny pack, I will buy one, just saying. Pouchy's a character from Inside Out too. Healthy. Standing up for what you honestly believe, even if it results in conflict. For example, bringing up an unpopular but authentic view in the planning portion of a work project so that it can be addressed. Unhealthy. Tantrums or blowing things up, either to draw negative attention or to demonize someone else to get attention as a victim. For instance, you say nothing in private to somebody, even though you disagree, and then you publicly denounce them, giving them no opportunity to fix the situation without the public humiliation. Another example, making dramatic accusations instead of expressing feelings like, you don't care about me, you never pay attention to me, instead of, I'm feeling lonely. You never pay attention to me. If that were literally true, did the person hear you? If the person heard that, they've paid attention to you, right? So tantrum is another one of those words like narcissist that gets thrown around too much, but most of us have been on the receiving end of an adult tantrum. We know when we see it, and they're scary. Again, the goal to get attention is getting attention for legitimate, real, positive qualities and accomplishments, as well as sincere validation as a person, even when you're not producing. The two things are very different. You don't only matter when you've actively done something good, right? Just listening to a friend, just being there for somebody. You know, you can't check that off the productivity list, but it matters. Wanting to be reasonably appreciated for that, that's absolutely healthy. That's the kind of attention that makes us feel validated. Healthy friend groups, healthy families, that flows between people. There's a nice little back and forth. Unhealthy is tricking, cheating, coercing people into giving you attention on false or exaggerated pretenses. because that attention doesn't really make you feel good. It's an addiction-like relationship where you need more and more just to feel okay. You need more and more attention because you're being dishonest to get the attention. So you feel worse and worse about the dishonesty, even though you try to repress it. So when you're not actively receiving attention, you feel actively bad. So what can you do if you recognize some of these unhealthy habits in yourself? And what if you're stuck dealing with a chronic attention seeker? That's going to be the last part of this show after the break. Questions, comments, any feedback, give me attention. Liana at nottherapyshow.com. At nottherapyshow.com. Join the mailing list for you that no, you don't have to send comments just to give me attention. That was a joke. At nottherapyshow on X, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. X and Twitter are the same thing. Oh God, it's a week. When we come back, what to do with someone who does just want attention in a bad way on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, still talking attention seeking. And I am flubbing things more this week than most because talking about attention is making me very self-conscious about the fact that people are listening to this and I'm like, oh God, attention, people, yeah, right. So I have to work on my comfort with attention, right? That's why I wanted to do a show on, when is it good? When is it bad? Because I've spent a lot of years undoing the damage from being taught that wanting any attention is selfish, awful, evil, and dangerous. We all need a certain amount of attention. It's not always bad to want attention. Even if it's just wanting attention. Just please somebody pay attention to me for once. It's not always bad. But what about when it is? What about if we recognize ourselves doing that stuff that we talked about in the last segment? Having tantrums to get attention, manipulating people by playing dumb, playing up an injury, acting more hurt than we really are. What happens when we catch ourselves doing that and recognize that really wasn't fair? I don't want to do that anymore. If you recognize negative attention-seeking behaviors in yourself, especially on certain topics, learning to self-validate will probably help. Self-validating means telling yourself you did a good thing, and in a way you'll actually believe. Even when no one else sees it, or even if people are actively trying to convince you otherwise. This happens to people like me in the mental health space all the time, because people, they expect people who deal with anything mental health to be perfect, and nobody is. And so they jump all over you for mistakes or just, human quirks. And it can be really, really hard to go, nope, just because somebody says this doesn't mean it's true. They might not even actually mean it. They're just being cruel. They're ironically jealous of the attention, jealous of the perceived status. And that's why they throw the narcissism accusation. Now, how do you learn to self-validate? Journaling can help some people. Writing your ideas out so you can read them back. Some people do the write it out, leave it for a bit, go back, read it, get it with fresh eyes. Making a list of when you sought attention and it felt good, as opposed to when you sought attention and you felt guilty for the way you did it. That can be really helpful. In general, not only that self-awareness that comes from journaling, but practicing talking to yourself more like you'd talk to a friend than trying to head off your critics or catastrophize or repeating the way your haters talk to you or about you, right? Now, granted, if you're dishonest in your comments to your friends, you'll have to unlearn that habit, because dishonest flattery isn't being a good friend. If you're insincere in your compliments don't mean much. Seeking attention in healthy ways comes down to being honest about how you feel, not focusing on what other people did. So, for example, saying, hey guys, I'm feeling discouraged and need some encouragement, not criticism right now, is much better than, you never support me. When, if you think about it for 6 seconds, it'd be clear. What's the point of saying you never support me to a person you truly believe never supports you? If someone's not supportive, saying you never support me is not going to change them now. Now, it's really hard to make that change if you grew up in an invalidating home. Because admitting, hey, I'm feeling vulnerable right now is vulnerable, right? If you were raised by a narcissist, had a cruel sibling, they probably pounced on those moments of vulnerability. So it's scary to make that important change. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. Perfect is a lie. Stop trying to be perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. But the more you can get to those authentic statements of, I am feeling this, I could really use, that. That's honest. That's real. And if people reject you for that, that's on them, not you. All right. Similarly, if you grew up the way I did, being called ungrateful or selfish when you tried to express needs, you're going to be anticipating that as an adult. I do. And it's going to make it hard to break the habit of hiding your mental and emotional pain the way a wild animal hides a sickness or an injury. But you can't expect people to read your mind. You have to tell people, even that, when you say to somebody, what's wrong? And they say nothing, and it's something, that is a negative attention-seeking behavior. It's better to just go, I'm upset, but I don't want to talk about it. I want to make sure I'm being reasonable because I'm stung and I don't want to take it out on the wrong person. That is much better than saying nothing when it's clearly something, right? Okay, that's if it's you. But what if it's another person? Again, highly subjective, highly nuanced. I am very, very self-conscious this show about giving tools that a narcissist can weaponize. So I'm going to try to stick to some common sense general concepts here. What an attention seeker wants is attention. That's the motivation, right? Your general plan of attack is about rewarding them for good behavior and not rewarding them when their behavior is bad. And with attention seekers, pathological negative attention seekers, even negative attention, yelling, name calling, accusations, you're still paying attention to them. You are still rewarding them. Because for a compulsive attention seeker, negative attention is better than no attention. If that person is doing the sigh, ignore them. If they're playing up their injuries and their sicknesses, and you're not required to give them sympathy. If you want to, do it. If you feel like you have to, don't. Don't reward the behaviors that you don't want to encourage. It makes so much sense, but it's so hard at the time because often attention seekers, end up befriending people pleasers who have this compulsive need. I know this person wants something, so I have to give it to them. So this does a double duty of not rewarding the attention seeking and working on your people pleasing, because you want to do nice things for people because you want to, not because you have a catastrophic fear of what will happen if you don't. Make sense? Right. So if someone is hinting, you can say, I get the sense that you want something from me. I need you to be clearer as to what it is. And if they say, I don't want anything, okay, take them at their word. Taking compulsive attention seekers at their word when they, nothing, do you want help? Nope. And then they go in the kitchen and start smashing things around, right? In this little mini tantrum. Yep. They're acting like a child at that point. So treat them like a child. Now, you don't neglect a child, but you reward the bad behavior. You don't give attention to negative attention-seeking behavior. So after they've stopped the bashing around in the kitchen, after they've calmed down, give them the attention they crave then. Encourage them when they do legitimately helpful things. Give them encouragement at times they're not seeking it. Give them attention legitimately. Don't deny all attention, because that's abusive, right? You're punishing them because they're annoying you. Instead of going, I'm going to reward good behavior as well as bad behavior. And this can be incredibly difficult because the resentment builds when it is a constant tug of war between two people. That is the toughest situation you will get into as an adult. You know, especially with aging relatives who may never have learned these adult skills, or they start regressing as they get older and there's some cognitive decline. It's really tough. People who have trauma also engage in a lot of these behaviors because they feel vulnerable, so they try to cover it up and it comes out sideways. There's often a lack of self-awareness. So again, the goal is to be kind and praiseworthy and supportive when you can, but to put people in timeout when they are doing things that you don't want to reward. And yeah, they may blow up. It may make the tantrum even worse before it gets better. And you have to decide, is status quo tolerable to you? Or is this something that really needs to change? And you're going to take responsibility for your part in the unhealthy attention-seeking cycle. And I'm done getting attention this week. Okay, I can stop. Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Not Therapy Show is the website. Join the mailing list. Socials is at Not Therapy Show. Well, good, I can hide in quiet when no one can see me anymore. Thanks for listening to this show. Remember, your crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. Talk soon.